Hello and welcome to this episode of Demystified as we explore home cooking in a modern world. Hello, I'm Linda, and hello Paul, how are you going?
Uh, you're not going to say we're not here.
No, I'm not going to say we're not here because we know we're not here. We know we're all in lockdown in Victoria at the moment.
Yes.
How are you going?
How are you? I'm
Yeah,
good.
good.
I'm all right.
Yeah, it's strange times we're all in, and this isn't going away anytime soon, really, is it?
Very peculiar.
Never.
Anyway, on to the topic du jour.
Topic du jour, condiment.
Yeah, well, so, and I'm using the sort of term pretty loosely because if you talk condiments, most people would just associate that with, you know, mustard or, as we say
HP
in
sauce.
Australia, yeah, a bit of dead horse tomato
Yeah.
sauce. Um, but I just wanted to expand upon that a little bit. Um, and talk about some stuff which you can add to your cooking on the side of a dish or over the dish or whatever it might be. Um, and there's lots of things out there which you can do, which are pretty simple, and a good use of your oven as well. And you can do, like, I think in the first lockdown, we talked about, pickles and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
Am I
yeah,
right?
right. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of topical because I'm sort of working on this for something else, but um, yeah. So what I'm more along the lines thinking of, rather than the mustards and out of the jar stuff, is stuff that you can do yourself. So quite often, we'll cook a piece of meat or a roast pork, and I mean, like you do roast pork often. Um,
Yes, we do.
so yeah, applesauce I would consider a condiment.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so I think we've actually got a recipe on the website to do an apple sauce. So things like that, using your steam oven to just steam your apples and then just blitz them up. It's 100% pure apple sauce. That's a pretty quick and convenient one. But one that I found myself doing recently, I had a whole bunch of red capsicums or bell peppers, as they're called in the States. And so I roasted them up and I had like heaps. And so I then, so they're not pickled, but I then jarred them up. So they're that sort of fire roasted, not fire roasted, but roasted capsicums you often see in a jar in, excuse me, in the supermarkets or delis or something like that. Pretty simple to do yourself.
Yeah.
And you just add a solution of maybe some garlic with some vinegar, water, a little bit of sugar, salt, a little bit of black pepper, stick it in a jar and then throw the jar in the oven. And steam the jar. And I'll get back to you with timings and temperatures and all of that sort of stuff. But you effectively sterilize the jar and you seal it when you steam it. So then you've got your own roasted peppers. Now, while not a condiment as such, they're really a good, handy thing to have when you do want to make a condiment. And one that I make reasonably often is kind of like what's called a romesco sauce. Which is essentially those roasted bell peppers, and you roast some shallots and garlic and tomatoes with almonds. And basically, that's one of those sort of ones where you throw everything onto a sheet pan, stick it on combi mode, roast it, and then put everything together in a food processor or a blender, blend it up, add some olive oil until it's smooth, and happy days, you're done. But really delicious with steamed fish, with red meats, with chicken, with anything. And it just might lift up your meal a little bit rather than trying to make a gravy or a hot sauce or something like that. You can do those sorts of things and they'll keep for several days, depending on what you make, in your fridge. So that's like a good one as far as, your cooking of the ingredients goes. But I also wanted to talk about, and maybe not so much barbecue cooking, but, any sort of cooking, doing your sous vide steaks or something, and maybe you don't want to make a pan sauce once they come out of the steam oven, even for chicken or anything like that. So a couple of those sort of common pantry items that you and I have spoken about before, which, you've got your list, which you can't live without. I've got mine. But quite a lot of these sort of sauces, if you like, or condiments use pretty regular pantry stuff, and they will generally be a vinegar of sorts, some garlic, olive oil, and fresh herbs. So I'm talking more about things like salsa verde. So that's parsley, generally green herbs. And I mean, I don't follow any set recipe, but parsley. Sometimes I'll put some young spring onions in it, or scallions, depending on where you're from. Chopped capers, chopped cornichons, a little bit of Dijon mustard, some olive oil, red wine vinegar, salt and pepper, and happy days. So not like a pesto, but a salsa which you can put over pretty much anything, and it kind of, you can scatter that over some steamed vegetables. It'll just give it a bit more zing. And a really well-known one, of course, is chimichurri, which is not dissimilar, but a few different ingredients where you've got your fresh parsley. What I do with mine is I slow roast my garlic in the oven. Slow roasted garlic, shallots if you like. Everyone's got their own version, but the only thing I would say with something like a chimichurri is hand cut it. So there's lots of parsley. Depending on which way you go with coriander or cilantro, you can add or not add. And these are sort of green sauces. That one's also, chili, dry oregano, sugar is an important part of that. Olive oil and vinegar again, or lemon juice. So there are a couple of other little ones which you can sort of just have that in your back pocket when you're cooking and go, okay. And it takes 5 seconds, well, maybe not 5 seconds, but it takes 5 minutes just to whip one of these things up. And if you've got leftovers, just store them in a jar in your fridge. And all of those things, if you put a little film of olive oil over the top of them, stop the oxygen getting to them, that'll prevent them going off quickly. So most of them will keep for a week or so in your fridge like that. And if you've got anything green, so a green-based sauce, even if you're making a pesto, like a traditional basil pesto, salsa verde, chimichurri, anything like that uses a lot of green herbs and you want to maintain the green, just whatever container you put it in, if it's a clear container, a glass jar or anything like that, wrap it in foil. It stops the light getting to it. And when you stop the light getting to it, it won't turn brown and go off really quickly. So,
okay.
Yeah. And other things like one other one which I recently did, which was, and we talked the other day in our podcast about things not to steam, and we'll get to that topic, but I just threw some whole eggplants or aubergines in the oven and just cranked it up really hot and basically roasted them. And I wasn't making baba ganoush, but I was making sort of like an eggplant type sort of relish almost. So that's another good one. I used very similar ingredients to a baba ganoush, but rather than blitz it up or make it into a dip consistency, just a fraction thicker, really good with some steamed fish. You get that little bit of a smoky sort of flavour from it. So those sorts of things are really handy because they don't take long and you can do them well in advance. So, if you're going to have, not that anyone's having dinner parties, but you've got a bit more time on your hands. You can make these things in advance, stick them in the fridge, and just go, I've got that. That's all right. I can just throw a bit of that with that, and happy days. You're just lifting the meal a little bit rather than just putting a wodge of Dijon mustard on the side of the plate. But yeah, and it's using a lot of pantry ingredients and a little bit of fresh ingredients, and all these little condiments which you can whiz up are really, really quite good as far as just having them on hand. Of course, you can make your own barbecue sauce as well. It doesn't really involve a steam oven, but you don't have to follow set recipes. So if you want to make your own barbecue sauce, there's no reason why you couldn't do some slow roasted tomatoes or something like that and use that as the base for a good barbecue sauce. A barbecue sauce doesn't have to be this smooth, sickly sweet thing. It can be sort of like a, chunky, if you like. Maybe chunky is not the right word, but a little bit bigger in texture. Another one that I've recently been sort of playing around with is putting half onions in the oven and cooking them over a long period of time. And basically, once they've cooked, leave them in larger pieces. And once they've cooked, smashing them up, breaking them down a bit further into a pot. So it's almost like twice cooked. And then while that's happening in the pot, I've been putting bacon in the oven and just sprinkling a little bit of caster sugar on the bacon. So making like a bacon and onion jam.
Oh, okay. I don't want bacon and sugar.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
yeah, everything in moderation, Linda. Don't be so negative.
No, I was not being negative. I
Yeah.
don't love bacon, but
Yeah.
I've never had it with. I've
Well,
never
I
had
mean,
it that way. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you could certainly like drizzle your bacon with maple syrup if you wanted to. But candied bacon itself is quite delicious, but probably a bit much just by itself. So you sort of tempering that a little bit with some onions, really slowly cooked onions. And if you steam them first, you get a little bit of that moisture out of them. None of these are perfected yet, but I'm sort of playing around with a few different ideas. But yeah, I just thought, why not talk about something that I don't think we often forget it, but we certainly associate things like chimichurri with only grilled meats from the barbecue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't just need to be that. It can it will do a lot to lift anything really, and it doesn't just have to be a meat. You can go over your steamed broccoli. Like, why not?
Well, definitely, since I don't like it, it would change the taste. It would be great.
Well, I mean, there you go. Make a heap, Linda, and then you'll be happy. Like, and you can also, make them as coarse or as fine as you like. Fine, if you're going to make a chimichurri and you want to stick it in the food processor, who am I to say? The traditionalists will tell you that all your herbs need to be hand cut and everything needs to be hand cut because it's a textural thing. But yeah, I just kind of thought there's sort of an abundance of, at the moment I've got like so much parsley in the garden and fresh herbs and all the rest of it. And the other one that we haven't talked about before, but we have done some recipes with is compound butters. So that's where you essentially flavour a butter. And how does your oven sort of come into play with that? So quite often what I'll do is I'll like roast some nuts in the oven in a little bit of butter and then throw that in some whole butter, blitz it up with some lime juice or some coriander, some fresh herbs, and whisk that quite heavily in a stand mixer till it goes pale, and then just roll it up into like a large thick sausage in cling film, and then throw that in your fridge. And when you want it, you can pretty much slice it frozen, and that can go on top of your grilled meats. You can, if you've got your broccoli which you don't like, you can melt a little bit of that down in a pot or your microwave or in the steam oven itself, and just pour that over the top, and you're getting a bit of that toasted butternut sort of flavour, and you're dressing your vegetables up a bit, like you're just dressing things up a bit, and a lot of that stuff you can do in bulk, and especially the compound butter, stick them in the freezer. So I haven't got them yet, but I'm going to have about 3 or 4 different sorts of butter just sitting there in the freezer, just for if I do some steamed fish or whatever. Well, and there's no particular laws about whether you should use them or not, but it's really simple to do. So I mean, I'm going to be spending a day or so coming up with a few of the recipes, but we might do a bit of a condiment thing on the website about here's some little. I think we've put some recipes out there before with purees and stuff like that, which I suppose you could treat as a condiment as well. Like my favorite one was the carrot one. So really finely grated carrot, just on a box grater. You just steam it until it's like almost falling apart. Like you just almost it's got no resistance at all when you pinch it. It just goes to mush in your hands. If you just put that in a blender and put some butter on the stove and just cook the butter until it just starts to go brown, and just blitz it like you were making a mayonnaise. So you just pour the butter in while the machine's running. That is 2 ingredients, a little bit of salt, make it 3 ingredients. One of the most delicious things that you can put with anything. Like with, again, I say a piece of fish. It's really good with red meat. anything like that. And those little purees and butters and things like that, you can freeze them. You'll get a little bit of moisture in them, but when you go to reheat them, just stir it through. It's not going to be water laden. So if you've got some carrots sitting in the fridge and they're looking a bit tired and old, and you're like, don't know what to do with them. Good thing to do with any vegetables that are starting to get a bit droopy or look a bit old is before you cook them, when they've got to that stage, just put them in a bath of iced water, and that'll just bring them back to life a little bit, and then cook them. So you want to get rid of them pretty quick, but you can make purees and anything, and they can become your condiments rather than go straight for the sauce out of the jar, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, one of my favourites is the parsnip puree that you made back in the really early days of cooking with steam. And
similar process.
Yeah, very similar. And I think I tried a bit of your carrot puree when you made that, and it was yummy. And yeah. I think I said to you the other day in our on the weekend that while it's one of Dougie's most delicious meals, favourite meals, roast pork, by making a sort of a sambal oelek mix of, it was extra chili paste in and a bit of soy sauce and some sugar and bits and pieces. It changed the whole flavour of the pork, even though it was still effectively just a roast pork belly.
Yeah.
But it gave it
that's very different. You'd consider that a condiment, and you can certainly go, the Asian route and do, your soy sauce and things like that. That's really nice as well. Quite often, more often than not, they don't use sort of cooked ingredients. So your shallots, if you're going to use those, and ginger and garlic and all those sorts of things, aren't necessarily cooked. They're kind of raw and fresh. So if you want to temper those flavors a little bit, quite often a good thing to do is cook them. Depending on what you're looking for. But a good one is a chili jam, and you really slowly cook whole long red chilies with shallots and garlic, really long slow cook until it's all sort of jammy and caramelized, and just blitz that up. Absolutely delicious, just with a little bit of sugar, a little bit of fish sauce. Away you go. So, I mean, try not always think about when you've got your oven, it's not just making the immediate meal at hand. You've got something there which you can use as a tool to get all these things in your fridge, in your freezer, in your pantry, whatever it might be. And, you can do your artichokes, and you can sort of preserve them in almost like a pickling liquid. We did steamed artichokes before. And the best way to keep them would be to jar them up, make a little pickling liquid, stick the lid on, put them back in the steamer, and essentially sterilize and seal the jar. All of these. Half the reason is I was sort of wandering around a supermarket on my single only day out for the week, and looking at all these things in jars. Char grilled eggplants. Well, fine. You want that? You can char grill some eggplants, make a nice flavored oil, a little bit of vinegar in there. The vinegar always helps with the preservation side of things. Jam it all into a jar, nice and tight. You've got a steam oven there. It's virtually like a sterilizer. Seal the lid, steam it. We'll get back to you about times and stuff, because depending on how long you steam it for and your sterilisation technique and all the rest of it will depend on whether you can keep it in the pantry or in the fridge. But some of those things, if you want to, you can 3 months, 4 months in the pantry, like happy days. Away you go.
Well, I think you're right. This is a great time to be trialling different little flavours, particularly on your family, so that you can work out what you like, what you can make lots of. And then when we can, I know the rest of Australia can, and some parts of the rest of the world are going back into lockdown, but when you can get around to having a dinner party and inviting people around, you can try something a bit different with some confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. And the good thing about
up and, Paul, I need help halfway through a cooking process on the day they're arriving.
But the good thing about doing these sorts of things, or these sorts of like I say, I'm using the term loosely, these sorts of condiments, is that you or your guests can choose how much they add and choose how much they want to use.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that you're adding it to your own taste, which I like the idea of. Like, you go to a restaurant and you get a sauce made for your steak, let's say. You don't get to choose how much, generally, depending on where you are, and I'm generalising, but generally the sauce will come on the same plate as the steak. And unless it's in its own little receptacle, you don't get to choose how much sauce, which is why I like the idea of being able to, make it a little bit more bespoke to yourself. So nice big spread, and you've got a few different sort of like a little eggplant relish, a little onion jam, little fresh herb sort of salsa verde, chimichurri type thing, a bit of that roasted red pepper, a little bit of a kick of cayenne in your romesco, all of those things, and they'll match up with a lot of what you cook. So just thought it was worth chatting about and, putting it in people's heads. Condiments, they're a thing. Make your own.
Chimichurri is one of those ones which you see everywhere now, and yet I never heard of it a few years ago.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been an Argentinian staple for eons. I'm pretty sure it's Argentinian.
Taken us a while to catch up. Oh, someone might.
Yeah, but all of these things do. Like, it takes time. The problem is I quite often, you just sort of forget about it when you maybe don't do it. I mean, I do stuff like that daily. Like I'll do a little, parsley, something, capers, just rather than make a dressing, I'll make a little salsa type thing. And salsas are another one. Don't forget about salsas. A good fresh tomato salsa with some pickled jalapenos and lots of coriander and cucumber and nice fresh zingy, lime juice. All of those sorts of things. You can add some steamed corn to it or roasted corn. You get that roasted flavour with a bit of freshness. That all works quite well too. I mean, I love salsas, like on anything, and they can be made of anything you like. Make a carrot salsa. It doesn't matter. But yeah, don't discount the condiments. Just stick your head in the fridge and see what you've got, and go, oh, okay, I could make a little sort of something out of this.
I love salsa too. It goes really well, on crackers, on fresh bread. It's just and it's not a defined. It on something. It's bread on its own almost.
Yeah, it's not a defined recipe too, which is kind of a good thing. Salsa is a pretty broad term, so it can be anything you like. So just rather than those carrots that are looking a bit sad, stick them in some ice water and make a carrot puree and stick it in the fridge. You get it, or stick it in the freezer. Like, rather than chuck the carrots in the compost bin, or worse still, in the bin, use it up. And, a couple of other things I was sort of noticing that I was doing is we go through quite a bit of cauliflower, because my little fella actually is one vegetable he will eat. The leaves off the cauliflower, you can stick in the oven and roast them up. And you make like little sort of chips, just some olive oil, salt, about 200 degrees, combi mode, low steam level, until they're nice and crisp. Absolutely delicious.
Oh, so, wow.
That's probably more along the lines of not a condiment, but save up just try and, use everything. And, the capers in your jar, in your fridge, don't have to be with fish. You know what I mean? The cornichons that you've got, I mean, I don't know if people have this stuff in their fridge like I do, but the cornichons that you've got don't necessarily have to be with a antipasto platter and cold cuts or cured meats. They can be used in all of these little sort of condiments and sauces. I mean, don't forget classics like tartar sauce as well. Just some simple mayonnaise and a few bits and pieces, and happy days. That's a ripper with fish, and whether it's fried fish or not, it's really good.
Well, we go a lot of capers because I love them the way you suggested one time with steak, but I also make a lot of tapenade to serve. And so with olives and a bit of anchovies and some little bits and pieces, and that changes every time I make it. It's got a different taste.
Yeah, a little hint with capers: get the salted ones. They're always much better. Salted capers are much better. They need to be soaked and rinsed, but you get a much better caper than you do versus the ones which are pickled in vinegar.
Oh yeah,
when you buy them. But anyway, yeah. So that's my little diatribe on condiments. There you go.
Oh, it's very
condiments.
Good.
Give it a go.
It's the other part, isn't it? It's to what you cook.
Well, it is. Yeah.
And then
we kind of forget. I don't know if we forget about it, but it's probably something we should do more of, really.
Yeah, I think it's now you've given yourself a whole list of tasks to do for cooking with steam, really, haven't you?
Well, once I get back in the kitchen, at least I'll have some focus, Linda.
At least one day. Hopefully next month. Hopefully next month, which will be great. Yay. Yeah. Yay. Well, that's good. Thank you for that, Paul. And
no worries.
I think you've given us all some food for thought.
Oh, very good, Linda. I saw what you did there. That's good. Genius.
Oh, absolutely. Heart grow fonder, Paul.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Really. Yeah, no. Well, thank you, and happy cooking out there for everybody. And until next time, take care.
Stay COVID safe.
Stay well. Yes, exactly. Stay well. Bye. Bye, everybody.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this podcast as we explore home cooking in a modern world. We'd love you to subscribe, and for more information, please go to our website, cookingwithsteam.com.